Greetings and thanks for tuning in to this exclusive conversation with the ingenious creators and writers behind HBO Max's Search Party. My name is Nick McCarthy and I'm the Director of Programming here at NewFest, New York's leading LGBTQ+ film and media organization. We're delighted to host this conversation following the much anticipated launch of the final season of Search Party, as we've been rabid fans of the series through each genre-bending season. And season 5 has beyond delivered by expanding upon the transcendent qualities that has cemented the show as one of the sharpest satires of the 21st century. We'd like to thank our friends and partners at HBO Max for their continued commitment to queer storytelling and for making this event possible. And there will be spoilers, so if you haven't yet caught up with Search Party, please stream all 5 seasons on HBO Max and then tune into this panel after binge watching. Now, please join me in welcoming our wonderful moderator for this conversation, Hollywood staff writer at Vanity Fair, Chris Murphy.
Hi, thank you, Nick, and thank you, NewFest. I am so excited to chat with the brilliant and insane minds behind Search Party, HBO Max's dark, absurd, completely unpredictable, and laugh out loud, funny series that has reshaped comedy for 5 unbelievable seasons. I am truly devastated to see it go. It's my favorite show on television, and I will say I am really happy though to see it go out on the highest of notes. It went out with a bang in every conceivable way. But enough for me. Let's get to talk to the creators and writers that have joined us today from Search Party. So we've got we've got writer Sabrina Jalees, who wrote for Search Party on seasons 3 and seasons 5, and she wrote one of my all-time favorite episodes, Mark and Elliot's Wedding. So we'll definitely talk about that. We've got co-creator, executive producer, writer, and director Sarah Violet Bliss. We have the other co-creator, executive producer, writer, and director, Charles Rogers. And we have Starlee Kine, who has been writing for the show since season 1 and wrote the 3rd and 8th episodes of the 5th and final season. Awesome. Thanks for joining me, guys.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you. I'm personally excited to be here.
I love that. I love that energy. Okay, so I guess I'll just start with probably the most basic but most obvious question. When did it dawn on you? I guess this is more for Sarah Violet and Charles. When did it dawn on you that the show sort of had to end with a zombie apocalypse sort of based in Brooklyn?
Well, when we were writing season 4, we were like thinking maybe season 4 was going to be the last season, but then started cooking up some ideas about what it would be like for Dory to be on the other side of a near-death experience rather than having her actually die. And at first we thought about the potential of her causing some sort of virus, and then COVID happened and it was a little too on the nose. But we still had excitement around the idea that she has this near-death experience and then causes the apocalypse, and then that turned into zombies somewhere in between season 4 and the beginning of writing season 5.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's wild. You were gonna go fully virus. Okay, so Dory. Okay, so there was gonna be that would have been kind of on the nose for sure. Did you toy at all with the idea of having Dory and the rest of them sort of not make it, sort of curtains for them, die at the end of season 5? Was that an idea? As you said, you were thinking about that for Dory for season 4. Was that ever a possibility?
I kept pitching that for the first episode of the season, but they're a little bit, when it's not their idea, it's kind of hard to get through.
Okay, that's the tea. That's the tea.
Well, it's just about the idea being good. That's all, really.
Oh, no. It would have been really, really cool.
There was
okay, well, you can always write fan fiction.
There was a version where everyone died, though, in season 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there was a season 4, a really bleak season 4 idea about Dory killing her friends and then not admitting it to herself and living in delusion. But then, the longer that we thought about it, the more it just felt like that was too depressing and not really like the biggest point that we needed to make in making the show.
It was like
but there was a version where, oh sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's what set her free.
Mm.
Yeah, that's what set her free. Killing your friends sets you free sometimes. But there was a version. There was a version where we thought about the friends not making it out at the end, and maybe like Portia or Elliot becoming a zombie and losing one of them. But because Dory had died at the end of season 4, you kind of didn't want to like live through all that trauma all over again. So it felt like it was cleaner and cozy / sad for them to all end up together in the apocalypse at the end.
It almost seems sadder that they don't like. Would you rather turn into a zombie or be just responsible for all the zombies?
Well, I guess that brings me to like another question, whereas in terms of responsibility, right? I think there's a lot of talk of, Dory, how responsible she is for her own actions throughout the whole entire series. Do we feel coming to the end of the series that she is responsible? How responsible do we feel Dory is, for the zombie apocalypse and her narcissism versus her, her want to do good and to change people? Where do we land on that? Or are we supposed to land anywhere with that?
100%, right? She's 100% responsible. I love that scene with between her and Chantal where they're arguing about who did it. I do have to say, I worked in the show, but I am also a fan of the show, and I do think like I spent last night just scrolling through Twitter to see what the people think, and I agree with the people that it just landed so well. I think it just really like was such a perfect season of TV, and these characters. It's sad to see them go, but like if they're gonna go, what a perfect way. I really, really enjoyed the season. Am I supposed to be doing that?
I love it. That's so sweet.
Yeah, so good.
Yes,
So
and great too. Absolutely chiming in to that.
The
when
dogs
the
disagree.
agree, that's when you know you're onto something.
Yeah, I think it's definitely. I mean, I think that what the show I think has always we've tried to like come back to time and again is that this has always been like Dory's story, and that it's about one person's journey of self-actualization, for better or worse, and that on some level you cannot self-actualize without causing the sort of anarchistic irony of it is that like perhaps you cannot self-actualize without hurting someone or hurting others. Self-actualize. And so like something that's all like we had one conversation in writing season 4 about like who is Dory that was like semi-excruciating, because it was just about like Dory, no matter what, is like a cipher for denial and the ability to say a lot of different things that we want to say about psychology and humanity and like how complicated it is to be alive. So for everything that you can say about Dory, there's always like a little bit of like a counterbalance in the mix too, where you're like, but or maybe not, because maybe it's about how that's beautiful or whatever. Like there's just always like there's a soupiness to it, so that like at the end of the season and the series, like when she's looking at those missing flyers, like it doesn't reduce down to like a really easy to like finite point. It feels like the show is carrying the weight of all of these conflicting messages and layers, because I think that's what the DNA of the show was really about, was just about how confusing and meaningful life is.
Dory doesn't know herself.
Or not.
How could like the viewer know Dory?
That's really wow. That's such a interesting point. It actually sort of dovetails with this article, this Gawker article that sort of ascribed. I mean, it was about the final season of Search Party that said that Search Party sort of it let me attribute it to the article written by Paul McAtery, who says that according to Search Party, the American millennial is a person seeking narrative purpose above all else, which we like totally see, I think, in Dory from season to season, and the narrative sort of shifts with whatever purpose she's trying to find. And I think in the show as a whole, do you feel that rings true, or is that, you know?
First of all, Paul is a ex-husband of mine that
I
walked away.
I wanted to trigger you.
We're still not sure how that factors into his point of view about the show.
Yeah. I mean, like season 4.
I love that.
Yeah,
quote.
season 4 like culminates in Dory like revealing how much he sought narrative purpose. So it seems Dory having a story to tell is more important than anything else, and the story she tells herself about herself is true because that's who she is.
Yeah, Charles, you were gonna say. What were you gonna say?
I totally agree with that, and I think that, you know, maybe it's not specifically millennial, because I imagine that's been going on for the whole time humans have existed, but I think that, and maybe it's probably like an instinct in us to like see life, you know, in that sort of Joseph Campbell like hero's journey arc or whatever. But now our generation is so burdened by the cyclical loop of performing yourself, and that maybe that's what's specific to our generation, is the idea that like we wrestle with the fact that we're presenting ourselves all the time, and that, you know, if we're seeking meaning, it's through the lens of, are people watching us seek meaning, and how are they experiencing it? And I mean, it's ultimately all narcissism, but it's a level of introspection that perhaps has not existed before.
That is, wow. That is, yeah, it is all narcissism. And it is very much how we sort of, you know, operate day to day. And something that I want to get into like the specific of season 5 is you take on directly influencer culture, and sort of you satirize that beautifully with the Disciples. And then, you know, we've got so many different things at play. We've got, you know, Instagram culture, we've got Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, we've got Elizabeth Holmes. How do you sort of decide? There's so much going on in our world that you guys expertly skewer. How do you decide, like, okay, we got to take on that. We got to hit this. We got to satirize this, or sort of just naturally come from the actual arc of storytelling of what's happening with Dory and the game?
I think it's kind of a little bit of both, like the, you know, where does the story want to go, you know, and then also like what is interesting us at the time that we're writing it, and why, and feeling, oh, that would be a cool thing to include in the show, and have just our perspective on it go through the scenes.
The observation of insanity being so close to life coaching is, I think, in all of our feeds.
Yeah.
Hopefully not all of my followers are watching, but you know, it's like what comes after the breakdown is the instinct to teach everyone how it is that you really live. And that was so perfect, her escaping from the institution and immediately going live with, you know, her truth.
Yeah, it's weird, like that happens. The people who tend to become like life coaches or, you know, spiritual leaders have been through something that you're like, wait, that person is not qualified to tell me how my life should be going. Or they're literally like, you know, if they are actually quite wise, as I find a lot of the you know, Eckhart Tolle's of the world, like Eckhart Tolle.
Thank you, SV.
Famously, if you know anything about Eckhart,
famous
like,
name.
Sabrina Tolle.
My ghostwriting alias.
What an interesting avatar you picked.
You don't want to be burdened by being Eckhart.
Yeah.
Put that there.
That feels real. That feels truthful.
I would actually say, Sabrina, I think Sabrina's closer to enlightenment than most people I know. I will say that.
Oh,
Sure.
okay.
Yeah, I see it. What's her color?
She's got them all. She's got all the.
All of them, baby.
Yeah.
Rainbow.
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
But-
SB was saying Eckhart Tolle, and then I totally.
Okay. Just the point I just wanted to make that is in line with Search Party is that like Eckhart Tolle, like famously, he talks about how he like in his moment of enlightenment before that he was like suicidal, you know, and I think that's common for a lot of people, and so that, you know, made its way into the show.
Wow, I love that. I love all of that, and it's so funny. And maybe this is, I mean, and this is actually sort of more, I think, for Sabrina and Starlee as like, you know, I mean, you're all writers, but I would love to hear your take on this. It's that, so even knowing all of this and knowing that, you know, Dory is a narcissist and they're all narcissists and they're all, you know, they've sort of wrought the end of the world in so many ways. I still love them all. I still really do. I still like them all. How do you sort of thread that? How do you keep these, you know, depraved, you know, terrible, narcissistic millennial characters likable and funny, even when we know that they're sort of, you know, responsible for some of the worst things that humanity could imagine?
First of all, thank you for knowing that Starlee and I are sort of the tone checkers on that.
I got that energy.
Narcissists are likable, though. I mean, that's like a character trait of narcissists, is that they charm you and you love them and you can't stay and they're irresistible. So like that part goes very much in line with them being narcissists. And I think, I mean, you also just want to, I always find it interesting when people are like, but we like them so much. And I'm like, you get attached to people you just want to keep, that's where the coziness comes from. You actually know them and you can't transcend, you choose to like them over judging them. Like that's, I feel like what Search Party does very effectively for all the seasons is you kind of have to remind yourself more that they're doing bad things much more than you have to remind yourself that you like them, because they're just so fun to be around. And they also,
and I think also in casting, like the group of people together, it's like we were all together watching the season, and we were together for so many hours, and I kept on thinking like, oh, I'm gonna go home soon, but I never wanted to go home. And I think that it's, you know, when that is sort of like the secret sauce to an awesome show, is both behind the scenes and in front of the camera, it's people that you want to be around. So it doesn't really matter. I think, you know, off of what Starlee just said, like in the relationships in your life, there's people in my life that if I listed the things that we'd gone through, you'd be like, what are you doing? Yeah. And I'm like, I'm obsessed with lunatics. That's what I'm up to.
They're not boring.
A list for me.
Imagine if the friend group had dropped Dory. Like, she gives them so much excitement.
What would happen?
That's what also the season, like, it starts with them dropping her and they hate their lives. They don't want any part of it.
And they make some crazy decisions, Portia and Drew, you know, that's, you know, just absolutely some wild decisions. That's such a great point about just human nature. And that's something that I do like about the show as a whole, and something that I've talked to SV and Charles a little bit about this before, but Search Party sort of sidebar. Yeah, we sort of had a private conversation.
What else?
He was there, but he was just not talking to me.
But something that I know that I love about the show, and that I do think that it's so hard, especially in like the 2021 landscape, is to like have an overall message or to like have a point of view without being didactic and sort of hammering people over the head with sort of a message, which is something that I think the writing of the show and the show has done beautifully for 5 seasons. So as writers, how do you toe the line? Like, did you ever feel like, oh, this is too, you know, as you said earlier, you know, making Dory start a pandemic would have been too on the nose. Like, how do you know when too much is too much and for that?
I mean, I think that's like collaboration first and foremost. I think that the Search Party is like the amalgamation of, it's only when I talk that dog happens. I just want everyone to realize that.
The dog, you can hear the dog very, very loud.
Louder than you.
I'm very quiet. My dog. It's all going great.
But I think that like
Collaboration,
tone,
Charles?
like what's weird about like both. Yeah, and I'm gonna say a little more about it. Tone and meaning. Like I think that there would be no. What I love about the meaning of Search Party is that the things that I love the most, like the art that I love the most, is where you really feel the meaning rather than like intellectualize it. And like that's what I love about like Kubrick or something, not to name like the straightest director on a on this gay panel, but like queer panel, but like just like where like when you feel like that, you're like, I feel the weight of so many ideas and layers in something, and I don't even know what the full like stripped down takeaway is, but for some reason that always feels like richer to me. And I think that like the meaning of Search Party, like the calibration for it collaboratively, especially in the writer's room, is about like, does that feel right? Like, does that feel? And so like the biggest conversations or the hardest ones are where like not everyone agrees if something feels right. And that can end up feeling really personal sometimes because everyone has a different relationship to like what they feel the meaning is, and we're all like projecting our own stuff onto making the show, of course. So like in the end, I think it's just about like the kind of the group train moving together as we like find what feels like the right meaning or something.
Yeah, and there's a lot of times a Search Party, it's a lot of like what doesn't feel right. Like sometimes when you sit, every time a new season starts, there's a little bit of remembering what Search Party is, both because the genres switch every time, and you just kind of you have to remember a lot of stuff, and a lot of it's like ideas will get pitched and it so inherently doesn't feel like Search Party. You even, and sometimes can even name the kind of show or feeling that it does feel like.
That pitches that you could
what
name names.
I'm trying. Yeah. Well. Yeah.
If it just ended with a
And that's it. And that's the panel.
right here.
Starlee signs off. Sabrina signs off.
No, that makes total sense in terms of like, putting the tone and you know, there are things that feel right, and there are things it's easier to sometimes know what doesn't feel right than what feels right in those moments. I could totally see that.
Yeah.
I do want to know, just sort of like for Sabrina and Starlee for real this time, how did you get involved in the show? Like how did you? I mean, Starlee, you were there since, you know, the very beginning. I'd love to know about that. And Sabrina, you joined, you know, you started writing season 3.
Craigslist posting. I posted, take me. I met Charles first, I think, and then I met SV, and I had already been a fan of the show. And it was just this, like, I had been writing on different shows, and it just sort of, I guess in season 3 came up, and I wasn't gunning for it, and maybe that's why I got it. But it was I felt so
well. We
lucky.
shared social circles.
We shared
Same
social
friend
circles,
groups, you know, and I felt like every one of our friends,
but
same financial circles, and I feel like
so lucky. What did you say, Charles? What did you say?
Same financial circles.
Same financial circles.
The yacht parties and everything.
America location, and so I just hung there. We like hung out, but you know, you never. I think that was like an illusion that I had when I first moved from Toronto to New York. Is like, so what you do is you move to the same city, then everybody get famous, everybody hire you, and that was something that. I mean, it kind of, but I think the illusion of it, when it's confusing, it's the idea that like everybody's working on cool things, and if you're hanging out around them, you like get on the elevator with them, but it's actually just everybody's on their own elevators. And I was so lucky to get pulled into their elevator for the moments that I got to work on the show.
We did say we needed the Canadian POV because we felt like it hadn't been authentic enough when they went to Canada the first season. So that also might have been.
And I'm always sharing the Canadian POV.
I remember that criticism very deeply. Yeah. for sure. Wait, Starlee, you're from the very beginning. How did you get involved in the show?
I was doing a podcast where I was solving mysteries, and then Search Party was on TBS, and TBS had come to me about my mystery podcast, and then I said, I want to solve solve fictional mysteries, and then just really did say that, and then she set me up with Charles and SV. I was in Paris trying to solve a mystery, and like in our interview, I said, not for nothing, I'm solving a mystery right now in Paris. And then I was like, technically, I think hired as a mystery consultant in the first season. Mystery POV. And
so weird.
Starlee knows what really happened to Princess Diana. And
That's like, the show is great, but I want to talk about that forever. That's incredible.
Well, I've told Starlee before that when we had this call with her where she was like living above Shakespeare and Company in Paris, like, and I could just hear like tin cups from like the 1800s rattling around like in the background or something, and I was just like, I don't know, like she's like this woman who solves mysteries. Like that my first experience of Starlee was like, she's this woman who solves mysteries, and then now it's like Starlee's like family to me. It's just such a funny like starting point for.
Yeah, it's really not traditional.
Absolutely not.
And then I just hung on.
You hung out. That is truly the best. That is the most fascinating thing I've heard all year, and I can say that because
I think it'll be the most fascinating thing you hear until like March 26th.
Okay, I'll hold you to that. We'll solve that mystery. We'll see if that happens. That's
Starlee,
I know,
naked in your house. You open your door, Starlee's naked in your house. It's March 26th.
I cannot be wrong about my prediction.
Oh my God. I love that. I guess now I'm really curious just in terms of, because I'm sure the room changed over time and it was sort of different every season, and with sort of, as Dory shifts and goes on these different adventures and the whole gang, the courtroom season and then the trapped in the ship's basement season, how did the room sort of change and adjust, did the process change that much, or was it sort of like business as usual each season?
Kind of both.
This is a juicy question. The subtext.
I would say that like
I'm trying to think of like what isn't the boring answer.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
I know. I'm like in the first season, like we were figuring out what the show was and getting on its feet, and like the idea that we hired Starlee as like a mystery consultant is like so silly. And like we were, new and not knowing what we needed. Luckily she was just brilliant. So like, okay, good. We need her, but not for that consultant.
I love the idea of her like having her back to you and just like being like, mystery wise, you're on to something.
Also, like,
the trail's gone cold.
I don't know.
I
know. What could you possibly have provided?
I do remember thinking, the mystery is not a real mystery. What are they going to need me for now?
Oh yeah.
Little did you know, the mystery was you wrote for the show.
But that's true though. I think that when we started the casting, the hiring for the writers' room of the first season, we were like overthinking it and reverse engineering like our needs, and like we hired people that we didn't know. But I think that as the show went on, like Sabrina is a great example, or Naomi is a great example of writers who are just, in our friend circle. And then it just became more about like the organic experience of hiring people who are like-minded rather than like casting some net out there. And I don't want to ever make anything like that ever again. Like I never want to be like, please send me 500 submissions. And like, I just only want to work with people that I know I like.
But I think I remember going to, when I went and saw SV and Charles talk at NYU, and you guys were talking about getting scripts and how I had sent a podcast and they liked that you could hear my podcast, and you could hear my voice, and you could hear my sensibility. And I feel like all I'd heard before that was you just have to have your sample. You have to have your sample. And there's like one way they tell you to do it. And even after search party, I would like talk to my agent and I'd be like, they said this. So they said that the reason they liked it, because they liked hearing that the podcast stood out, and they liked that they could get to know me that way. And he still was like, no, but the way you do it. And I'm like, but I think that's what leads to people making mistakes, like it not working by the people they hire. Cause generally, cause I don't know. I think it's really good to veer from that. Not just because it worked out for me, but I think it's definitely with search party, the more we knew each other and the more that we were comfortable with each other in the room, the more the ideas flowed and led to the really good stuff. And we're really like the group by the end are just so comfortable with each other.
Wow.
Yes, I think it is true with everything in life. Just whatever is the most authentic version of your creation is going to draw a lot more attention and towards the right projects and people working on things together.
Yeah, and it helps also to know each other because you like can kind of shoot things down easier.
Yeah,
like when you're comfortable, if we're wrong, if the writers are wrong, they get more and more comfortable being like, no, we want this is what we see it, and this is how we're going to show you. Because a lot of times you guys will have ideas that we aren't always like immediately on the same page with, and then like zombies are kind of like that. And then you like, the more that you guys trust and have a vision of what the idea that's going to work, the more we see it, and it gets to that faster because you know us, and you can just be like, no, this is not even like in a forceful way, just like in a trusting way.
And then on the other side, when I pitched Everybody Dies season 3, episode 1, it was very quick that they said no.
Yeah.
Which I think we're just friends.
Definitely.
I hope too that goes in the other directions, because I think that there are times that the writers are like, no, that's stupid to us, and we're like, okay.
Yeah, I definitely think
I don't
feel more comfortable. Yes.
That's amazing. I mean, it seems symbiotic, and that makes so much sense. I guess, because this is sort of a queer festival, so we should ask some questions. I know. Off. Yeah.
Sabrina goes, I stay.
What? Oh my God.
There's the queer one.
Yeah. I gotta say, the show, I mean, what it's done for comedy, and and specifically like a specific type of comedy, alternative comedy in Brooklyn, LA, and Chicago, and all between, it showed the world a different slice of what comedy can be, and in the process of that has sort of put so many queer artists and performers and writers on the map in just a really amazing way, without, again, it being like hammering you over the head with it. Not even how intentional, but how do you feel about sort of giving that to the world now that you're sort of on the other side, now that it's all said and done, and sort of being that show for so many people?
You're gonna miss it. That's something that it's like, I never thought on a personal level for myself. Like I never had a vision for like my career or my life or something where it would be like almost, forgive me for saying this, but like a Lorne Michaels. I'm not about to compare myself to Lorne Michaels, but like in this,
like telling you are him.
Stop! I'm not. But just in the sense of like, whatever, like people who bring people who are already, like Sabrina said, actually, though, everyone is on their own elevator no matter what. But, there are, to be able to bring people together in a way where you're like, leading some sort of creative thing and like picking who gets to come on and who feels like a part of that. Like, I never realized how cool that would be, like, and so that's something that I hope I get to keep having. But I think it's also in tandem with youth, and I don't think it's gonna feel the same way ever again, and I don't think it's gonna hold the same specialness ever again, because I think that once everyone's like adults, like I look at like the I don't want to be too, but like I look at like the generation above of like comedy people, and like at a certain point when everyone's acted with each other 100,000 times over 20 years, it doesn't have the same meaning to it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like there's something really cool about having this, like, you know, it's just like a little bit of a lightning in a bottle situation, and everyone will go on and do their own stuff, but at least there was like this right now.
When the adults come on though, like they grown, like the generation above actors who are on the show, like Michaela or Louis Anderson, I see the joy. They have so much fun because they've been. I don't want to speak specifically for them, but like if everything starts to feel the same, you definitely sense it when they come to the search party set. Everyone on the search party set is so happy to be on it. It's a really joyful set, and especially the adults who come, it's a very different experience than they've had, and you can feel how addictive it is. Like I see them not wanting to let go of it. I mean, I'm older than you. Like I think it's lightning in a bottle because you're young and you're having specific experience, but I think it's also a different experience than has normally been had, and I have more faith that you'll be able to keep it going. Into your adulthood, into your senior years,
into my 90s, into our 90s.
For like once in our lives, it really feels that way sometimes. But like, it's a premise that doesn't. It's not about being gay in any way. It's about Dory's experience and all of this, but folded into it in a really authentic way is all of these characters that are, again, the more I guess we're pulling from what felt like people that you wanted to hang out with, the more it just filled in the way your world looked like, which is not the way the world's world looked like. I will bring up again that I'm in Big Bear, and I do feel people are racist here and homophobic here, but it's 2 hours away from LA. And I was thinking about, you know, as I faced the third encounter where someone was not charmed by me, I thought about doing this panel today. I thought that, you know, it's more special than we think, because in our worlds look this way, but the world's world doesn't look that way. And it's, I think, impossible not to be charmed by this show if you have taste. And along the way, you are meeting people who happen to be queer. And that's not the part of the story that the focus is on. And that's important. And I think that's also the future, is like people understanding that it's not like we've got a gay show and so we've done a gay show. It's like, no, it's like there's gay people in your world, and so there's gay people that populate your show. It's the same thing with diversity. It's like finally, like, we can understand that like Insecure is a show that it resonates, and it's sure it touches on the Black experience and has mostly, you know, but it's not, it is actually just business wise makes sense to make shows that are rich and colorful and are populated by different kinds of people.
Yeah.
So that one day I can come to Big Bear and really make a barista smile for once.
Wow.
This is your pilot, Sabrina.
This is my pilot. Barista smiling in Big Bear.
I love that. I would watch that. That could be, hey, the next SB and Charles, you guys recently signed you know, an overall deal at HBO, so we could, you know, make you next.
It's true.
But Starlee, you were going to say?
Big lesbian bear.
Yeah.
Genius.
I was just gonna say that this season also, like, I feel like having everyone get together really shows that the future is like it. I like it doesn't take away anyone's identity. Like Elliot is still gay, but he's also sleeping with Dory, and that to me is like, you watch it and you're just like, this is the next step. I feel like that is the biggest statement you can make about all of it. That happened.
Yeah. I gotta. Oh God, love that. So happy, so proud of
It's
Elliot.
true. It's funny. Like this season is. I mean, you think about last season. It's like Cola Scola's dressed as Susan Sarandon, you know, bludgeoning Dory. and you'd think that would be the gayest season, but then it's not. This is the season where they're all having sex with each other, and there's all these like queer influencers in the mix, and it's like what's I think because Search Party, the hook of this, the ability to sell, like we sold Search Party because we weren't foretelling anyone that it would go where it went. Like I think that if you front loaded the show with all of these themes, it would have never sold. But because it's called Search Party, it's not called like Queer Party, like every other show. Any show that's about a demographic the demographic has to be in the title, first of all, because that's what network execs need to see in order to understand how to like frame something for the marketplace. So it didn't have that. Like it's just this kind of mix of all this stuff culturally that ended up like the through lines of like queerness or camp or whatever just kept solidifying because we wanted them to, not because anyone was asking us to or like directing us one way or the other. And that with that,
and it's like the most, even with like it's kind of it's the most sexual season too, and it felt like Search Party. There was all these seasons where whenever we would talk about when sex would come up, or it felt like the show needed to kind of get to this point to kind of all come out in like a very real way. Like it wasn't like plotting who's going to hook up now in order to advance the plot. Like it was intentionally not happening all this time. And then when it finally does, it's like commenting on when that happens in other things and then like taking it as way further than we even thought was going to happen when we were first talking about it.
Wow, that's such a great. I mean, it's so in keeping with what we've been talking about how these things sort of just happen narratively, and not because you're trying to force feed it down anyone's throat, or you're trying to make a statement, or you have to put it in the title so that some exec in Bel Air can be like, oh, I know what this is, and who was going to watch it. And so I feel like it becomes such a more organic, which is what, as you said, like an authentic, organic experience that like everyone can draw from, which I think is so fantastic. And I guess I know we're sort of, this is like, I guess we have time for one more question, which is, I could do this literally all day because I'm having so much fun. And I know Search Party it's not sentimental. It's not an overly sentimental show, and I don't want to, veer too much into the sentimental. But given that the show has come to an end and now you're looking back, I just would love to know, like, if a moment or a scene or a day that that like really encompasses the experience for you, and and how you hope even the legacy that the show will leave, because it's clearly resonated with a swath of culture and the generation in such an important way that it's the legacy it's here. But yeah, if everyone if you have a favorite moment or something that encapsulates the experience.
It's so hard.
I
think
I love to
maybe
ask
I don't know. I have a million favorite. It's hard. I mean, I have a million favorite moments, but the one that stands out to me is when Drew, at the end of season 3, when Drew shows up with the obelisk at Portia and Elliot's apartment and is like just and she won't cop to it, and she's like, you're the one who killed him, and it's like just very intense and rainy, and I just remember thinking like, this is really good. Like everyone is so good, and I like my favorite moments are the ones that are the funniest, but also like in the end, I think the ones that I'm like proud of all of us for are the ones that have like a lot of intensity and charge to them. So I don't know. I like that scene.
That's interesting.
Fantastic. Yeah, it could be anything from a.
I think mine is just like being at the screening for the final season and thinking that, it was like from like 1 to 7, the invite said. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go see all my people, and then I'm going to not be, sitting in a screening all day. And the second I got there, it was impossible to not be there all day and go to the next place with everyone. And it kind of gives you the sense of like, the magic of the show is in the family of the show, and that's like not gone, and that was very sweet. Because I'm still gonna be in contact with every single person on the call sheet because I have their numbers.
So watching the show, we did that every season except we didn't get to do it in 4 because of the pandemic, and we got to do it in 3 because we'd seen it, because we shot 3 so much earlier than when it came out.
Yeah,
it is like every time so magical, and we all, because we get to invite our friends. And everyone who's all the people there are in the show in some way. Like it's such a crossover of friends and participants in the show, and it's so cozy and so much like the end of Muppet Movie. And every single time you can, no matter how inside it you are, you're able to watch it as a fan, and it just makes it feel complete finally.
awesome. Yeah.
I always say that like my favorite scene is the murder pancake scene, and I think also part of that is when we were shooting it, it was just so in every way collaborative, in that we also had like 100,000 extra, not 100,000 extras, I wish, but we had many.
You wish. Everybody's dream is to have
My dream is to have enough
What a nightmare.
that the scene requires. Anyway, but because of that, like it was when we were shooting the courtroom scenes, it was like we had a live audience like every day that we did that, and that scene was particularly just so everyone who is in that scene being their funniest, and then Starlee's in the scene also, and that day Wallace Shawn came to set just to be on set to watch, because it was in season 3, and it was just so great because he was sitting there watching it for like he didn't know that what was happening, but he was just like, fantastic, just like, this brilliant person thinks it's fantastic, and it's just so that scene is like the amalgamation of both like a really really good comedy, I think, and then also very important for the story to continue and move on in the way that it's supposed to. And it just so many elements, like when Louis Anderson's like, my clients aren't being charged for having sex with food, it's just so I love that scene.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and Murder Pancake is such, there's like moments in Search Party that start as such like almost not such a joke in the room that everyone instantly understands, and then like the world gets built like the second it's presented, you just all like yes, and it's so fully realized as it's being created, and then to see it executed. Those are the best moments in the room, I feel, too, when we just like go. Jesper Society was like that too, when suddenly like we had like hit, we were like pitching in a whole different direction, and Charles suddenly was like, what if there's like a Pennywise? And it just opened up this whole other vortex, this whole other like thing, and then we were suddenly in the Jesper Society. Like it was just like everybody just 100% understood what that meant and how to build it out, and it's so fun.
Oh, God, I love that. Wow, that's Charles, go. No, you good?
No.
What?
Did
you say my name?
Yeah.
I thought you had something to add about Jesper Society. Yeah.
Just that it's real and he's the captain.
No, I'll say one more thing. It's real. I will say one last scene that's really fun is when Sabrina hits Cola Scola with the car. Sabrina's really funny in that scene.
That's an iconic scene.
Longest ponytail ever to be on television.
Wow.
You'll never see Sabrina in anything in a ponytail ever again.
No.
You'll never see her in a TV show again.
Wow. And on that note,
despite that rude comment, I just want to add before we leave,
yeah.
best names in the game on this show, and that's just the cherry on top. I mean, Dr. Baby, Dr. Carpet.
Both
Amanda
Both name is so good.
Dr. Baby, Dr. Carpet, Dr. Flesh, and Dr. Lombardo. That's the season of crazy doctors.
For some reason, Dr. Baby.
Dr. Amanda Baby. Her first name, Big Amanda.
Dr.
Really.
Amanda Baby.
Really
by Abby Elliott.
So good.
Oh my god. Oh god. Okay. And with that, I'm literally I got the light. We unfortunately have to end here. This was
the internet. The next internet needs to have or we've run out of space on the internet.
Yeah, the internet has said no more. The internet's done. Just pulled the plug on us. But I have to thank you all so much for your amazing work on the show and creating just a cultural artifact, an iconic, amazing, incredible show, and for appearing on this phenomenal panel. Thank you, Sabrina and Starlee and SV and Charles so much for being on this panel. Thank you to NewFest for hosting us, and HBO Max, of course, for everything for Search Party. And just know, if you're watching this, you can stream the entire final season of Search Party on HBO Max right now. So you better go do that. I can't believe you're watching this if you haven't, but if you haven't, go watch it. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Dr. Amanda Baby, never. Wow. That was fun.
That was fun.